Hey guys, it's LEGO Boys U3. Today I'm going to show you how to solve the Mastermorphix. Okay, so today is just going to be a basic tutorial on solving the Mastermorphix. Now this cube is actually exactly like a normal 3x3, and it's very important that you know this in order to be able to solve it, because you're actually going to be solving it pretty much exactly the same as you would solve a 3x3 using the beginner's method. So when we look straight on at both of the cubes, you should be able to recognize each of the pieces between the two of them. So these are the centers. On the Mastermorphix it has two different colors. These are the edges around here. On the Mastermorphix it only has one color. And these are the corners around here. So some of the corners have just one color, you see these small ones right here, and some of them have three colors just like on a 3x3. And so knowing that should make the solving process of this cube seem much more familiar. Anyway, for the purposes of this video, I'm just going to be using my basic beginner's method that I do on a 3x3. So first up, I solve a cross kind of intuitively like this, and then I put it on the top and do R prime D prime RD to put in all of these corner pieces. So I find a corner piece on the bottom, R prime D prime RD, until it gets in like this. I then turn the cube around, find an edge piece to put into one of these middle layer slots, and then do a simple algorithm to put that edge piece into the slot. And then I finish off doing the last layer in 4 steps. First of all, doing an algorithm to get a yellow cross on the top, and then I get all of the pieces on the yellow cross to kind of line up with their respective centers like this. And then I get all of these corner pieces into the right spots by repeating an algorithm. And then I orient all of these corner pieces by doing R prime D prime RD again. And just keep going until the cube is solved. And so if that method does not seem familiar to you, first off, if you don't know how to solve a 3x3, definitely start with this cube because it's much simpler than this one. If you use a more advanced method, I would recommend actually downgrading to the beginner's method when you're solving this cube, just because it makes it a little bit simpler to follow along with each of the steps, and eventually you can work up to using a slightly more advanced method. And if you use a different beginner's method other than what I just showed you, then it might be kind of hard for you to follow along, but I would recommend kind of like looking at the algorithms that I show you how to do and kind of following along with my beginner's method, and then maybe you can find a way to integrate that into your beginner's method. So ultimately, you should not need to learn any new algorithms or anything like that in order to solve this cube, but I'm going to be showing them on screen anyways, just in case you don't know them. So let's just get into our first step on this cube, which of course is the same as the first step on a 3x3, solving the white cross, just like this. And we have to make sure that all the centerpieces line up with the white on the top, and also their respective colors along here. Now on a Mastermorphix, it's actually a little bit more complicated because these centerpieces can be rotated the wrong way. And so if this centerpiece was like 90 degrees off from where it needed to be, it wouldn't matter on a normal 3x3 because you can rotate this however you want. But on a Mastermorphix, it won't be correct. And so first what we need to do is just choose one centerpiece to be kind of our starting centerpiece, like the white one on a 3x3. And so I'm just going to choose this one right here. It's yellow and red. And so we're going to be solving the 4 edge pieces around the center. And so now we're just going to choose one of these 2 colors on our starting centerpiece. So for example, I'm just going to use yellow. And so what we want to do is look at the 4 adjacent centers to our starting center. So this one, all these 4, and find yellow on 2 of these centers. So this one does not have yellow. This one doesn't. But this one does, and this one next to it also does. So what we want to do is kind of line up everything just to make it a little bit easier to imagine. So this is our starting center up here, and these are 2 of the adjacent centers, and you can see that yellow is going to be on this side right here. And so now we need to find one of these yellow cross pieces and just put it into the right spot. And so we can just kind of look around the cube until we find one of these yellow edges. And now what we can do is try and put it into the right spot up here at the top. Now as you can see, these pieces aren't really flush, so that's not going to work. And so for example, in this case, what we can do is bring that off back where it was, move this top centerpiece over and back down, and now you can see that this piece is indeed lined up. And what we can do now is actually move it over, and now it's also lined up with the adjacent center just like that. Now just like in the 3x3 beginner's method, this might take a little bit of trial and error to kind of figure out how to get these pieces into the right spot so that the centers are also flush with the piece. And so for example, we'll just do this next yellow edge piece, which needs to go in this spot right here. So we look around the cube until we find a yellow edge piece. Here's one down here. And maybe we're just going to try and put it into the right spot. But as you can see, that is not correct. And so what we want to do is kind of move out of the way. Maybe do something like move the center like that. And now you can see that is in the right spot. It's just that the centerpiece right here is not rotated correctly. And so what I like to do in order to rotate the centerpiece, because obviously just rotating it like this will also mess up the edge, is first I want to hide the edge away from this side. So I'll just do a double move and bring it down at the bottom and just kind of move it out of the way like this. And then I'll just do one simple turn to rotate this centerpiece. and then I'll move the edge back next to the centerpiece and back up to the top layer like this. And now you can see that the centerpiece is in position. And so now if we just take a look at our cross, we can see that we have these two edge pieces solved, but these two edge pieces are still unsolved. So if we look at these two red edge pieces, we need one right here and one right here to be solved. So just looking around the cube here, we have maybe a red edge piece down here that maybe will go up into this slot up here. So let's just try it. But as you can see that it did not work. It's not really lined up correctly. It's not flush. So maybe we'll try and move it over into this other slot. Maybe this one will work. Yes, it will. So now this edge piece is in the right spot and it is flush, but if we look at the centerpiece right here, we can see that it's not rotated correctly. And so we'll do kind of the same thing that we did earlier. Just move this edge piece down into the bottom layer and out of the way. And then we can rotate this centerpiece however we need. That's not right. You see that is right. They're now lined up and flush. And move it back onto the top layer like this, and now everything is flush and the center is correct. Now we can take a look at one of our other red pieces like this, move it up to the top layer. You see that it's in the right spot, but our adjacent center is not correct, and so what we want to do again is just bring it into the bottom and out of the way. And then we can rotate this until everything gets all flush and lined up, and bring it back up at the top. And now as you can see here, both of these red edge pieces as well as both of these yellow edge pieces are all in the right spot. This is kind of our end goal for the cross. We want to have all these four pieces in the right spot, this center correct, and all these four centers also correct. Anyway, that step may have seemed kind of long and confusing, but that's basically because it is a lot longer and a lot more confusing than it is on a 3x3. I would just say use intuition, lots of trial and error, until you eventually get things lined up in this configuration. Anyway, now the next step on a 3x3 is to find one of these corner pieces on the bottom layer that goes into the top layer, and what we want to do is line it up so that it is underneath its appropriate slot, and do R prime D prime RD, until it is in the correct slot and it is also rotated correctly, just like this. Now, if you're not familiar with that R prime D prime RD algorithm to put the corners in the right spot, you probably don't use the same beginner's method, so I would just check out my beginner's method tutorial, which will be linked in the description down below. Anyway, it's the exact same thing on this cube. You have your cross on the top along here, and we just look around at the bottom layer corners until we find one of them that goes into one of these top layer slots. And so for example, right here we have the yellow, red, and blue slot. And we have the yellow, red, and blue corner piece right here. We just put it right underneath the slot that it needs to go into, and do R prime D prime RD until it is in the right slot, and it is also rotated correctly, as you can see right here. Now, of course, there are two different types of corner pieces on this cube. There's the type that has 3 colors, which I just showed you right here, and there's also the type that only has 1 color, like this one right here, which should be yellow. And so if we look at the bottom layer, we can also find the corner piece that has just yellow on it. Move that underneath the slot that it needs to go into, do R prime D prime RD, until everything is lined up into the right spot, exactly like the beginner's method. Anyway, we can now look around. This one needs to be yellow, red, and green. So yellow, red, and green happens to be already right underneath it. R prime D prime RD, and now it's in the right spot. This one needs to be red, so we find the one that has red, R prime D prime RD, and now all of our corner pieces are in the right spot, these 4 right here. And so of course there are slightly more complicated cases that you might get, like for example if you're looking for the red corner piece to go into this slot right here and you can't find it on the bottom layer anywhere, it might be in one of the other slots already, and so in that case you'd have to take it out using R prime D prime RD like this, move it underneath the slot that it needs to go into, R prime D prime RD like that, and now it's in the right spot. Also, of course, if you come across a corner piece that's already in the right spot but it's not rotated correctly, like this one right here, what you just want to do is just do R prime D prime RD on it until eventually everything will get lined up correctly, just like this. Alright, so now that we have all of this done, let's flip the cube around onto the second layer edge pieces. And so on a 3x3, what we would do in a case like this, where we want to move this edge piece over into the slot right next to it, is do a simple algorithm. So moving it to the left, we would do U prime, L prime, U, L, U, F prime, U prime, F prime, just like that, and it would go into the correct slot. Now similarly, there's also another algorithm that will take an edge piece and move it over to the right, which is U, R, U prime, R prime, U prime, F prime, U, F. But you should already know those algorithms, so applying it to this cube is actually pretty simple. And so of course with our first layer on the bottom, what we want to do is find one of these slots that you need to put one of the edge pieces into. So for example, this one needs a blue edge piece right here, and we look around the top layer for a blue edge piece. So for example, the blue edge piece is right here. And so there's actually 2 different places on this top layer where we can position this edge piece. We can put it right here where it's flush with the center, like this, or we can have it right here where it's not flush. We actually want to have it in this position where it is not flush. So you hold the cube so that this piece is in the front, and then you do the appropriate algorithm to move it into the appropriate slot, which is to the left. And so that goes just like this. Now, once you finish doing that, the piece should be in the correct slot, just like this. And now we can repeat that step for some other edge pieces. So for example, we have this one right here for the yellow edge piece. So we can try lining it up like this, but you see it's flush, so that's not correct. So we actually want to have it over here so that it's not flush. Now we hold it in the front, do the algorithm to move it to the left. And now the edge piece will be in just like that. And now we can go on to one of our other edge pieces. Here's the green one right here. You see this one's flush, so we want to move it over so it's not flush. And now we do the right facing algorithm to move it into the right slot. Again, just like on a 3x3, exact same algorithms, exact same steps, exact same movement of pieces. Just like that to get the green piece in. Now, of course, if you have some sort of tricky case where maybe we're trying to put the red edge piece into its correct slot, but it's actually already in the correct slot, except flipped around the wrong way, we can just do the exact same thing that we would do on a 3x3 in this case, and just move one of these other edge pieces into its slot to bump this one out. So like this, using the exact same algorithm. And now this edge piece will be on the top layer. We can make it so it's not flush, move it over to the right. And now after doing that algorithm correctly, just like I showed you before, everything should be all lined up and our first two layers shall be complete. Now it's time to move on to the last layer, which is quite a bit different on this cube than it is on a 3x3, at least the first couple steps. And so as we know from a 3x3, the first step of the last layer is to get the yellow cross on top. And what that means is actually orienting all of these yellow edge pieces so that yellow is facing upwards. And so for example, on this piece right here, yellow is not facing upwards, so that is not correct, and that will not make a yellow cross. Of course, we have an L case right here. So we can do our algorithm, and now we have a line case. So that means that only these two edge pieces are oriented correctly, because only these two edge pieces have yellow facing up. And so to finish it off and make our cross on top, we're going to do that algorithm one more time, which will actually flip these two edge pieces around so that we will have a full yellow cross on the top. And so that algorithm, of course, is F, R, U, R prime, U prime, F prime. And as you can see, those two pieces were flipped, and now we have all the pieces oriented correctly. And so on a Mastermorphix, of course, we're still going to have to orient all of those edge pieces, but there's no easy way to check if they are all oriented. So there's no like one single color facing upwards that shows you if they're oriented, just like the yellow cross on a 3x3. And so the way that you check and see if these edge pieces are oriented is what you want to do is just focus on one color to begin with. So let's just do green. So we have these two green edge pieces right here. And what we want to do is line up one of these edge pieces with their respective center and make it flush. And so we have one of these pieces flush like this. And so now that we've checked this one green edge piece and we see that it is flush with the center piece down here, we want to check our other green center piece and see if it is also flush with that same center. So this is our kind of center that we're checking all the edges against. We see that this one is flush. We move this edge over. We see that this one is also flush. And so this is actually a bad case. If both of them are flush on the same centerpiece, that is bad. That means that one of them is misoriented, or it just kind of needs to be flipped around in place so that one of them will be flush and the other one will not be flush. As you can see, this is bad. We can also do the same check on these other blue centerpieces over here. We can see that this edge piece is flush on the centerpiece, and this other edge piece is also flush on the same centerpiece. So similarly, the blue ones are also messed up, and one of them needs to be flipped around. And so what can we do to flip around one of these blue edge pieces and one of these green edge pieces? Well, it's just like on a 3x3 where you have a line case. You want to flip around this edge piece and this edge piece, you just do F, R, U, R prime, U prime, F prime. So just like that on a 3x3, let's just go ahead and flip around this bad blue edge piece and this bad green edge piece. You can also flip these two, it doesn't really matter, just any pair of the two colors. And so we just need to do F, R, U, R prime, U prime, F prime. And now if we go around and do that same chest on all the center pieces, so for example, we'll use this green one. You see it's flush with the green center. This one is not flush with the green center, so that is a good thing. We can also test the same thing with the blue ones. You see it's flush with the center, and this one is not flush with the same center. So now all of our edges are oriented. And so before we move on, I'm just going to show you one more case that you can get during this step where you're orienting all of the edges. So let's say we just finished up with F2L, and now we're going to be checking if our edges are oriented. So we want to look up here, maybe line up this blue one, it is flush. Line up the other blue one, it's also flush, that means that one of them is bad. We can do the same thing with the green ones. This one's flush, and this one's also flush. That means one of them is also bad. But as you can see here, we can't just line up one bad one here and one bad one here because they're both green. That'll just flip two green ones around, and it's not going to do anything to our messed up blue ones. And so in this case, what we want to do is actually flip one of these ones and one of these ones. We don't want to flip two opposite ones. We want to flip two adjacent ones. So it's exactly like a case on a 3x3 where we have an L shape up in the corner. We want to flip this piece and this piece. We don't have an algorithm for this specifically, But what we do in this case is just do our algorithm once, get to a line case, do the algorithm again, and then we have a cross. So very similarly on the Mastermorphix, what we want to do is flip this one and this one. So we do our algorithm once, and then do it again. And now if we go ahead and check our pieces, the orientation, they should all be correct, which they are. And so the next step on a 3x3 is to get it so that all these top layer edge pieces are not only oriented correctly with yellow facing up, but they're also in the right spot. And so for example, this edge piece right here is in the right spot, but these ones over here are not because the colors are not lined up. So what we want to do first is just kind of do turns on the cube like this until we can find at least 2 of them lined up. We have 1 right there. Now we have 2 of them. These 2 are not lined up, but these 2 are. And you'll always have at least 2 of them that are lined up. And now once we have a case like this where they're adjacent, we want to hold them right here, the 2 solved ones, and do this algorithm. Just like that. And now they'll all be lined up. And so on a Mastermorphix, this step is exactly the same. We want to get it so that 2 of the edge pieces are lined up, then we can execute our algorithm. So looking around the cube here, this one is not lined up, this one's not lined up, this one isn't, but this one is. As you can see, it's flush and it has the right color. But that's only one of them, we need 2 of them. So we turn the top layer like this. You see none of these are correct. Turn it again. It looks like one of these is correct right here, but not 2 of them. Turn it again. Now we have 2 of them that are correct right here. So you see they're adjacent. So we hold them kind of in the back corner, in the back and the right. And now we do the algorithm RU, R prime U, RU2, R prime. And now as you can see, all of them are in the right spot, just like this. Now you might also remember a slightly annoying case from the 3x3 when you're trying to line up 2 of these edge pieces so that you can do your algorithm, and you're doing U moves, and you have 1 edge piece right here, and 1 on the back right here. They're kind of opposites and not right next to each other where we need them. And so in this case where they're opposite like this, we just hold the cube at any angle like this, any one will work. We do the algorithm, and now it should set up into a case where we have 2 of them adjacent, where we can now do our algorithm correctly. Like that, and now they'll all be lined up. And so it's the same thing on the Mastermorphix. If we're looking for those 2 aligned pieces and they happen to be opposite of each other, so this one's lined up and this one opposite is lined up, but these 2 are not, we just do the algorithm once from any angle, like this. And now we can look around the cube a little bit and maybe align it like this so that this one's lined up and this one's lined up. And now we can do our algorithm one more time. And now everything will be in the right spot. And so now that all of our top layer edge pieces are oriented and in the right spots, what we want to do is actually solve this centerpiece right in the middle. So this is not actually a 3x3 step, it's a little extra step that goes in between these 2 steps on a Mastermorphix. But what we want to do is check if this centerpiece in the middle is solved. And so in this particular case, it is solved because as you can see, everything is flush and the colors are correct. Now you can also have a case where this piece is flush, but as you can see, it's not solved. The colors are kind of flipped around. And what you want to do is go back to the algorithm from the last step, which goes like this: R, U, R prime, U, R, U2, R prime. Just do that once, do a U move, and then do that algorithm one more time. R, U, R prime, U, R, U2, R prime. Then do one final U move, and now you can see this centerpiece will be solved. That's just a quick little algorithm to flip around that centerpiece. And so now instead, if you come to a case where the centerpiece is just not flush at all, you see it's just kind of totally mixed up, what we want to do is actually hold it so that we have 2 of the same color pieces like this, and we actually want to go back to the algorithm from 2 steps ago. So that algorithm is holding it like this: F, R, U, R prime, U prime, F prime. And you actually want to do that algorithm twice. Don't move the orientation at all. F, R, U, R prime, U prime, F prime. And now that actually brings you back 1 step, but what we can do from here is just kind of look around the cube. So we have these 2 pieces in the right spot, and now we can do our other algorithm, R, U, R prime, U, R, U2, R prime. And now everything will be lined up. So basically what we did is we did that algorithm twice, and then it just brought us back 1 step. And now everything should be solved, and the centerpiece should be mostly in the right spot. So now the second to last step on a Mastermorphix is actually exactly the same as that step on a 3x3, so we were trying to get all the corners into the right spots. So we first look around the cube and see if we have any corners in the right spot. If we don't have any, we just kind of hold it in any orientation, do the algorithm U, R, U prime, L prime, U, R prime, U prime, L, just like that. And now we should have at least 1 corner piece that is in the right spot, which is this one right here. Now we can do that algorithm again, either 1 or 2 times, until all the other corner pieces are also in the right spot, which they are right here. Now we can just translate that onto a Mastermorphix. So we look around, none of them are in the right spot, so we want to just execute the algorithm just as is, any orientation. Now if we look around at these last 4 corner pieces, we can see that this one is in the right spot. So we hold this one in the front right, just like this. Do the algorithm once or twice. And now you see they are all in the right spot. Of course, sometimes also you might come to a place where you have one corner piece in the right spot. You do your algorithm, just like this. And you still only have that one corner piece in the right spot. So you just do the algorithm again. And that should get everything lined up for you, just like this. And now we can be onto the last step of the cube. And so just like on a 3x3, what we would do is we start off with one of these misoriented corner pieces, do R prime D prime RD until it is oriented, rotate the U layer, and continue to do R prime D prime RD on all the remaining corners until everything is solved. Now there is a slight variation on the Mastermorphix, but it is pretty much the same exact thing. So what we want to do is hold the U face on the top like this, start with one of our unoriented corners. So we start off just doing R prime D prime RD, just like this, until the corner is in the right spot. Now we move the U layer over to our next unoriented corner, which is over here. Do R prime D prime RD. And now this is going to be where the weird thing comes. So sometimes you'll finish doing your R prime D prime RD, and you look at the top layer and all the corner pieces seem to be all lined up. But the bottom layer has not yet solved itself. Normally on a 3x3, once you finish orienting all the top layer corners, the bottom should all solve itself. But in this particular case, it actually didn't. And so what we want to do is don't freak out, don't rotate the cube at all because that will mess up your algorithm that you're in the middle of. What we want to do is just move the U layer so that we have kind of one of these single color corner pieces in the front right spot. And now what we want to do is just continue on doing our R prime D prime RD. And eventually after doing that 2 or 4 times, you should come to a spot where the bottom layer will solve itself, and now everything on the top will be solved. Now I'll show you that tricky case one more time because it can be a little bit confusing. Like for example, you can have just one corner piece misoriented when all the rest of them seem to be solved. So what we want to do is just start off doing our R prime D prime RD, just like normal, however many times we need to until this piece is all lined up. And now we rotate over to one of these small single color corner pieces, and then just continue doing R prime D prime RD until the bottom solves itself. There we go, now it's all solved. We can reorient our top face. And now the Mastermorphix is complete. So there you go, that is how you solve a Mastermorphix. At a basic level, it is the exact same thing as a 3x3, and you can solve it pretty much the exact same way with the exception of those tricky center cases at the beginning and kind of at the end. So if there's any step that you didn't really understand on this cube, I would recommend rewatching that portion of the video and messing around with a 3x3 in that same step and trying to figure out how the pieces of this cube match up to the pieces of this cube. And once you understand that, you should be able to solve this cube pretty easily. Anyway, if there's still something that's confusing you and you've rewatched that section of this video, you've rewatched my beginner's method tutorial about that step on the 3x3, and you've messed around with it a lot yourself and you still can't figure it out, then go ahead and leave a comment and be very, very specific down in the comments below, and I might be able to help you out with that too. Anyway, that is pretty much it for this tutorial, and I will see you guys next time.